Hello and welcome back to another video. This video is about to release just before the start of Aro-spectrum Awareness Week, which is from the 20th to the 26th of February. Now, just coincidentally, I was planning to do a video about Aromanticism on this week. It wasn't particularly to do about Aro-spec Awareness Week, but it just happened to be a nice coincidence. But the video I was going to make for this week was actually talking about the negatives of being Aro or Aro-spec, and how society really isn't designed for Aro people. However, since it is so close to Aro-spec Awareness Week, I don't want to be overly negative, and I don't really like being overly negative in general. So instead, I've retooled this video to be more balanced. I am going to be talking about some of these more negative aspects, but I'm going to be balancing those negative aspects with more positive aspects of being Aro. Now, there is obviously a large disclaimer on this video that I myself do not identify as aromantic or Aro-spec. I'm alloromantic and I can't speak from personal experience. However, I don't think that means that I should be entirely silent during this week. And if you do want to hear more Aro-spec voices on this channel, then I recommend you go back and watch the 2 interviews I did last year with Gentle Giant Ace and Sarah from Sounds Fake But Okay. But without further ado, let's get started. Aromanticism is about romantic attraction, and a big form in which romantic attraction is generally expressed is relationships, romantic relationships. And our society, especially talking from a very Western perspective of course, is very centered around romantic relationships, to the point where being single is looked down upon. If someone is single, it is seen as a negative. Obviously, not wanting to be in a relationship is not explicitly aromanticism, but I think that a lot of aromantic people don't want this same sort of romantic relationship that most allo people would do. And of course, the same can be said with asexuality, that most people want a specific type of sexual relationship, whereas ace people don't. However, I think the difference is that romance is much less taboo than sex. People are much more comfortable talking about romance and talking about what they want out of a romantic relationship, whereas it's only really with close platonic friends that you would talk about sex. And of course, there are more tangible things that society does to disincentivize you from being single. A big thing is that there are quite significant financial benefits to cohabitating with someone. Of course, it is entirely possible to cohabitate with someone you're not in a relationship with, but that's much less common in the long term than having a romantic partner. One thing that always struck me is that I get a reduction in council tax for living on my own, but that reduction is a far cry from what I would be saving if I were living with someone. So while there are systems in place to kind of alleviate the financial burden of living alone, it's not alleviated fully. There is still definitely a financial advantage for being in a relationship or just cohabitating with other people. Despite these societal pressures to be in a relationship, I think that aromantic people then get a better appreciation of platonic or familial relationships. Being aromantic also allows you to be free of those societal expectations. I think a lot of people can feel pressured to live a certain way, and if you don't want to live that way inherently because of your orientation, then that can then open the door to living free of other societal expectations. Another thing that society has kind of drilled into me is that there is this hierarchical structure in relationships, which I talk about fairly frequently and fairly recently, I think. It's basically the view that romantic relationships and sexual relationships are somehow superior to friendships and platonic relationships. This isn't something I believe personally, because I think my friends are at least as important to me as my boyfriend. But it is something that is definitely drilled into you, and in terms of in popular media and the people around you and how society expects you to behave, it expects you to value romantic relationships more than platonic relationships, and that can make it, I imagine, very difficult for someone who identifies as Aro to foster those relationships that they care about more when everyone else is working towards a different goal. In fact, I know that some people, when they get a romantic relationship, will then neglect their friendships. This may not necessarily be intentional, but they are then channeling a lot of their social energy, I guess, into their single romantic partner rather than the friends they may have outside of that. But conversely, that means that aromantic people are probably really great friends, simply by the fact that there is more of an emphasis placed on platonic relationships in the Aro community. Aro people are probably more able to understand the value of those relationships. I know I myself, being part of the Aro-spec community, have really been very cognizant of the importance of platonic relationships and not to neglect those in favour of romantic relationships. I think in general as well, friendships are more permanent than romantic relationships. I've had several relationships, but over that course I've had a consistent friend group. Also, I think one pitfall that Aro people will sometimes fall into is that they rely on their romantic partner for all of their emotional needs. I think because they're more likely to be fostering those friendships, they might have a better network of people to which they can share their emotional, not baggage, emotional needs. They can share that amongst many people as opposed to a single person. And finally, I wanted to touch a bit upon the place of Aro-spec people within the queer community, the larger queer community. I think that because of the majority of LGBT+ identities are defined by sexual orientation, by sexual attraction, it can make it difficult for Aro people to find a place within that community. A lot of queer people don't necessarily have the language to talk about aromanticism because they haven't been introduced to the split attraction model, and they think that attraction is one whole thing, and they haven't been able to dissect that into different forms of attraction, which then allows you the avenue to talk about aromanticism. And I think in that way, aromanticism and the split attraction model allows people to understand themselves better. Just as an aromantic person, being yourself can open up a conversation about the split attraction model, and there may be people who learn more about themselves because of your openness about your orientation. But yes, that is pretty much all I had to say today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I think I'm very glad now that I've made it a more balanced take, because I don't really like talking about things that are negative. It's sometimes important to do that, but I don't like being wholly negative, because I think there's a lot of negativity in the world as is, and I don't like to contribute to that if it's unnecessary. I hope you have a really enjoyable Aro week, and of course, if you want to hear what I talked to Marshall and Sarah about last year, then I'll put those links in the description as well. So I guess the overarching theme of this video is that even though there are troubles and difficulties in identifying as aromantic, I think that there are just as many really key benefits and things that people can learn from aromantic people, and I think you should definitely be proud of yourself if you identify as Aro-spec, because it's not easy, and just being yourself and just trying to be happy with yourself, that is enough, and I'm really proud of you for being able to do that. If you enjoyed this video, then please leave a like. I post videos every Saturday, so if you want to see more, then feel free to subscribe. That is all I had to say today. Have a wonderful day, and I shall see you next time. I didn't mean to be product placement in this video, but I don't want to switch shirts just for the video. Sushi, do you mind? Trying to be the centre of attention again. Familial.